Welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I am a certified personal trainer, and I'm here to help you achieve your fitness goals without pain. In each episode, I'll share tips and strategies that will help you stay safe and pain-free while you're working out. I'll also interview experts in the field of fitness and pain management. So if you're ready to learn how to stay active and pain-free, then subscribe to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I'm really excited about today's conversation because we're picking up where we left off with Esther Gokhale. She is the founder of the Gokhale Method, which is a structural approach to posture and pain that has helped thousands of people, athletes included, to move and feel better. Esther, welcome back.
Wonderful to be back.
So the last time we talked about posture, we talked about back pain, and today I know you have something coming up, and I would love to discuss it a little bit further because we have a lot of athletes that are having issues with the pelvic floor. And I'm wondering if you're starting to see that as well, because I know for me, it comes up, but I don't know a whole lot. So I refer them out to a physical therapist. So what are you seeing since you are working with the whole bodily chain?
Yeah. So, it's always been a keystone of our approach that pelvic anteversion is the right foundation for the rest of the structure. And when you have pelvic anteversion, then you have your pubic bone sitting under all the pelvic organs. There is absolutely no chance of prolapse of organs, of undue pressure forming on the pubococcygeal muscles, which are really not made for the job of holding up all the pelvic organs. And when people tuck their pelvis and send their pubic bone out in front, then all that's left trying to support the pelvic organs are these rather weak muscles, which people are encouraged to do Kegels to strengthen. But no amount of Kegels is ever going to suffice to bring this muscle up to par for a job it was never meant to do. And this becomes especially important for athletes because there's a lot of impact and maybe even jarring. And so the more mileage one puts on the system, the more important it is to have it finely tuned. It's true that athletes have especially strong muscles usually, but alignment is critically important. And so, yes, we've always seen a lot of pelvic floor issues because people come to us for back pain, and very often the same problem, the same structural problems that cause their back pain also causes their pelvic floor issues.
So what's the difference between structural alignment and doing Kegel exercises? Because a lot of times that is kind of what's referred or prescribed by doctors as well as physical therapists, because I don't know, after pregnancy, sometimes people have some urine leaking when they jump and all that kind of stuff. So what is the difference between what you're trying to show us and just basic, I guess, muscle work?
Yeah. Well, muscle work is really wonderful, but it needs to be for the right muscles in the right architecture. Sticking the wrong muscles under all the pelvic organs and then trying to strengthen them to do a job they weren't created to do doesn't work well. It goes together with a whole bunch of other stresses. And then what I've seen in a lot of women is they do tons of Kegels. They stop their urine while they're, going to the bathroom, and they do Kegels here and Kegels there. And then they get a tight pelvic floor. And now they have to go to a pelvic floor specialist to loosen it up. Massage therapist, specialized. So it's crazy making because they have to tighten it here, loosen it there, and it's not really clear to them what they're supposed to do. And meanwhile, they're suffering. They have leaking urine, incontinence, they have prolapsed organs, extreme cases, bladder prolapse, in addition to uterine prolapse, very incapacitating things. And if these things go too far, the fixes are not great. The pessaries and the mesh, and it just doesn't work extremely well in many cases. So what we're offering is really a roots cause fix, a roots cause approach. It's like, no, we need to figure out the right architecture. And in fact, when you have the right architecture, it doesn't matter what your age is, the pubic bone is going to be plenty strong to hold it all up. And the pubicoccygeal muscle, which the Kegels are intended to strengthen, those, yes, it is good if they're strong. The natural place to strengthen those would be sex. And overdoing, contracting those muscles and stopping the stream of urine is not productive. It can be counterproductive. So pay attention to the architecture instead of only strengthening.
So, how do we get to that point where we're tucked? Because I'm seeing it so often.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I have it as well, because there's been times where I can feel like some impingement or whatever because it's gotten too much. And I don't know, I do exercise. I don't do those exercises. I do different exercises and it seems to settle itself down. But why has it become a thing now that we're starting to see more often?
Well, we're seeing tucking the pelvis all over the place. Built into the furniture that's encouraging a certain architecture. It begins day one, coming home from the hospital, where we have these C-shaped car seats that are encouraging a tucked pelvis. And this is at an age where the human brain is learning what sitting means. So where we are teaching our babies to tuck their pelvis. And then, not surprisingly, they carry that architecture into the classroom and they're sitting with the tucked pelvis, and that lends to relaxed and slumped upper body posture. You can see a whole sea of kids sitting like this, with a C shape in their spine. And at this point, people can tell something's wrong. And the guideline is usually sit up straight, stand up straight, which doesn't affect the root. It doesn't address the root of the problem. And it creates a hack, a compensation of arching the back, which is not comfortable, not healthy, not sustainable. Most people, after a few seconds or maybe a minute of that, return to being relaxed and slumped. So we're getting it in our guidelines. We're getting it in adult furniture. The ergonomic furniture doesn't have curve in the right spot, and it's encouraging a tucked pelvis as well. The lawn furniture, the mesh furniture that encourages internal rotation of the legs, which then disallows the pelvis from nestling where it belongs. So we are getting this tucking encouragement at so many levels. When people have a sway in their back, they're encouraged to tuck their pelvis. That is the wrong approach. We teach people to tuck their ribs, not their pelvis. Often, the sway occurred as a compensation for the rounding in the upper body, which was a result of the tucking of the pelvis. And now when we ask these people to further tuck the pelvis, we're sending them on a down spiral. Not healthy. So we teach people address the root cause, and you'll be astonished at how easy it is to be upright and relaxed, and how you have wonderful support under all your pelvic organs, no matter whether you're running or jumping or jiggling or aging. Muscles do get weaker with age, but if everything's in the right spot, it won't matter. You'll be plenty well equipped. I have not had a single bit of tendency to incontinence or prolapse. I'm 65, not a trace. And I'm pretty sure it's because my architecture is sound. And this is what we try to teach all people.
So, what if I am an athlete who says, I don't have any symptoms? I don't know what you're talking about, lady. Like, why should I care about this at all?
Well, just, what I recommend is do a if you don't have a problem, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But it is worth understanding what other people are going through and what the common problems are, because, problems don't happen until they happen. And you can be merrily going along and wearing and tearing a disc, and you don't have any idea that's happening until it's herniated. And then that's a bit late. There's still fixes, and this is typically how we see people, and we help them anyway. But it's much better if at least intellectually you understand which way is up and how the human spine is supposed to be stacked, not only to prevent pelvic floor problems, but also back problems and neck problems and shoulder problems and the works. We're a precision
So
instrument.
so how would someone know, or what is a practical check that somebody can do to figure out if they're to prevent any future issues if they don't have them right now?
And are you talking about pelvic floor issues, or are you
Yes.
talking about other? Yeah. So pelvic floor, well, you want to check whether you have bony support under your pelvic organ. So just reach down there. Is it your pubic bone that is supporting your pelvic organs? Or are you counting on your pelvic floor muscles that may be strong right now, especially if you're an athlete, but with age might get weaker? And why encourage a problem when you could so easily prevent it? So that would be one check. Certainly if you're having urinary incontinence, when you sneeze, when you laugh, that's a big flag. If you're
Hmm.
having a feeling of fullness, after running or so, women report that there's some kind of discomfort and a feeling of fullness, and they can feel their cervix kind of too low. That's a big flag, red flag. And, one can also get the help of a gynecologist or so to see how they're doing. But the main thing is urinary incontinence and the beginning of prolapse and the architecture itself. You want to have bone under there.
So and of course I'm thinking about myself because I had a C-section and I know that alters, and I know things don't feel the same way they did as prior to the C-section because the muscles don't feel as strong, and sometimes there does feel like there's an imbalance in terms of my capability of doing certain things.
Yeah. It's important to, address that weakness because it's a cutting through certain muscles. And so depending on which way the C-section was done, there are always compensatory muscles, the transversus abdominis needs to be very strong. The three deeper layers of muscles in the abdomen, the internal obliques, the external obliques, the transversus, and then also the very deep muscles in the back need to hold everything slenderer and taller at the same time as you are not letting anything escape downwards. So we want to recruit the pelvic floor, and then think party balloon. Those you want slenderer, taller, so that your discs have lots of room, your vertebrae are eased apart, and everything has a sound structure.
That's good. That's pretty good. So on the other end of it, and I'm just thinking, I guess I'm questioning about just tilting of the pelvis. And I do see people who talk about leg length discrepancies, and so more of a, I don't know, sideways tilt.
Sometimes a leg length discrepancy is because one side quadratus lumborum, that is QL, is tight and it hikes up that hip and it makes that leg look longer, but it's actually not a leg length discrepancy. So be sure that you have a
Hmm.
very responsible diagnosis regarding leg length discrepancy. That really needs to be in the leg rather than in the hip joint or higher up the chain in the QL in the torso. And so that's one thing. And small asymmetries are well tolerated by the body, well compensated for by the body. And most of these we don't need to do nothing about. But if it's really very large, then a professional should advise on a leg lift or something like that. The asymmetries can be caused by many things. And what I always emphasize is get enough length in the spine that you are not super close to being in trouble from having maybe some scoliosis in the spine or so. Keep it long enough that you are out of trouble. And a lot of our techniques are about lengthening the spine. You mentioned tilting the pelvis, forward pelvis, and I want to just caution people to a lack of granularity when people are talking about pelvic position. because the term forward pelvis is usually referring to the angle of the pelvis relative to the ground. No distinction is made as to where that curve, that angle is happening, because we describe L5-S1 as being a very desirable place to have an angle. And you want the pelvis tilted forward at L5-S1. That's a wedge-shaped disc. Only if the pelvis is tipped forward are you respecting the wedge-shaped space that needs to house that wedge-shaped disc. Tucking the pelvis messes that disc up, messes that wedge-shaped L5-S1 disc. It squeezes the broad edge of the wedge in front. It pushes the contents backwards. Dangerous direction, because it's right behind the discs that we have the nerve roots. So what they don't make a distinction between is healthy anteversion, we call it, at L5-S1, versus the unhealthy sway that happens higher up. In these cases, the pelvis may actually be tucked, but the whole lower body is kind of stuck back, like the models are encouraged to do, where the whole buttocks plus a few vertebrae are thrust back, the arms are thrown out, the chest is out, the bum is back. It's really interesting because only female gymnasts do this. And I think it's an carryover from the modeling industry and from the sex industry, because the male gymnasts don't do that at all. They have a perfectly good J-spine as they finish their routines. And this arched back that every routine ends with, where the lower body is thrust back, the upper body is thrust out, does a lot of damage. Like if you remember Olga Korbut, she won 3 Olympic gold medals in 1976. And the part we don't hear about is that within a year, she had had 2 back surgeries. And this is what the female gymnasts are subjected to. This is the expectation, that they would do this extremely unhealthy position. I know from personal experience, I was a gymnast in middle school, not healthy. And so this forward pelvis that is from up higher is indeed a very unhealthy thing. But if it's an anteverted pelvis from L5-S1, then it's exactly what you want and need.
Does that compression of the nerves in there, is that what a lot of people interpret as sciatica, or is that a different nerve root?
Yeah, no, the sciatic nerve has roots at multiple levels: T12, L1, L1, L2, L2, L3, L3, L4, L4, L5, all those levels. And those nerve roots join together to form the sciatic nerve. And by the time it exits the pelvis through the sciatic notch, ready to go down the leg, it's as thick as your thumb. That's the biggest nerve in the body. And that is also the juncture at which the piriformis sits right on top of that exit. So all the more reason to have the pelvis in a good position, because when it's in an awkward tucked position, then that piriformis muscle jams the sciatic nerve. It's in a bad position. And also it tends to get hypertrophied, because in that tucked position, glute med can't do its job properly. And now piriformis has picked up its job, gotten hypertrophied, pressing on the sciatic nerve, thick as your thumb at this point, big problems. So many, many reasons to not tuck the pelvis. The way we say it is a tucked pelvis is a stuck pelvis. Many senses. You're stuck with a lot of problems is one sense in which that's the case.
You have a workshop coming up on July the 3rd.
Yeah.
Can you share some information about it? And is this information, or is there going to be an extension of more information that you are going to share?
Oh, yeah, there's so much to say, and we use images to exemplify what we're talking about, and we encourage people. It's a workshop, so they'll be learning something to take home in their lives. So it's at noon on Friday, July 3rd, and we encourage everybody to come, athletes and non-athletes alike. It's in honor of Independence Day. It's Free Your Pelvis. A tucked pelvis is a stuck pelvis. So we'll be teaching why and where and when and how and all kinds of details and how to really liberate it. And I'll have my colleagues, fellow Gokhale Method teachers, Nam Lee, who is an expert in women's fertility and women's issues, and Dr. Melissa Fernandez, who is a sexual psychotherapist and expert in all things psychological. We'll all be talking about how important the pelvis is and why we want to get it right and how we get it right.
That sounds great. And is there, for people who can't attend the live workshop, what is the best place for them to kind of examine their pelvic health?
Totally. Well, they should sign up anyway because we'll send them a recording. And, all of our work really centers around the pelvis. So come to any of our offerings and you'll be learning about pelvis sooner or later. But this particular workshop is entirely about the pelvis, how it helps with women's health, pelvic floor issues, and also back pain.
Well, thank you so much for joining. And I'll make sure that I put all those links into show notes about the workshop. And also, you can always go to Esther's website for any other information. And
Yeah, this was wonderful. Treat to be
well,
done, Dana.
I appreciate your time.
All right.